Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the mic moments. Now, here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Today, Marcus Bird is my guest from Melbourne, Australia. I love Australia, so we're going to have fun today. As a wellness futurist, momentum expert, and peak potential coach, he helps wellness business owners, subject matter experts, and entrepreneurs to build thriving companies and thriving lives. After helping thousands of people globally, he noticed that those that thrive crave success. They are hungrier, more determined, and want it more than anything. As the owner of the Wellness Leadership Academy, and with over 35 years experience in the business, he helps the audience to reignite their desire to want to make success happen fast. He has a Master's of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Diploma of Health Scientist, and is a qualified results coach, positive counselor, and kinesiologist. He has been an international downhill ski racer. I didn't know this. Private pilot and runner-up in the International Business Planning Awards. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Art. It's lovely to be here.
Can you tell us how this journey has gotten you to where you're at today?
Wow. Yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy journey, really, because, I started as a bit of a corporate Jedi. And, I started climbing the corporate ladder, doing the things that I thought I should be doing, doing all the right things. I had the right job, I had the right car, I had the right wife, I had the right, I had the right everything, but really based on my parents' expectation. I grew up in a very lucky situation. My father was a very successful businessman and, I didn't go without anything. But also what sort of came with that was a pressure to do what was expected of me or what I thought was expected of me. So I started climbing the corporate ladder, which was sort of fun until it wasn't. And I realized at some point, and I think there was a moment, and I love how you frame this up as shower epiphanies, I had a desk epiphany. So I wasn't actually in the shower at the time, but I had a desk epiphany, and I was sitting in my corner office in Melbourne, and I was a senior manager of a national company and, doing very well by, my dad's standards. And I remember leaning back on my desk and I put my feet up on my desk and I got very egotistical and I went, wow, look at me, aren't I doing an amazing job? And then something came over me. I don't know what it was, but something flashed over me. I put my hand on my heart and I said, there's got to be more than this. Surely this is not all that is. And 2 weeks later, I gave myself chronic fatigue syndrome. And I pretty much spent a good 2 years really just exploring life, the universe, and everything. I couldn't work any longer. I had to leave my job. I couldn't speak to my friends. I couldn't watch television. I couldn't listen to the radio. I couldn't have any stimulus whatsoever. And that was a really tough and interesting place because like you, I'm a very people person. I love talking to people. I love engaging with people. I love all of that. And so I had to pretty much I spent 2 years trying to get well. And so, yeah, it was a crazy sort of experience. It was really hard on one level and really fantastic on another.
How did you get well? How did your wellness journey come about?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things happen because, when I got sick, I went to the doctor like most people do. And at the time, I knew nothing about natural therapies. I knew nothing about alternative medicine or anything. I just knew doctors. And so I went and saw a doctor and we checked for everything because I thought, wow, am I dying? Have I got some crazy, horrible disease, right? And after visiting 3 doctors who took copious amounts of blood and said, nothing's wrong with you, I realized that the only person that was really sort of going to heal myself was me. So I started going on this journey of self-discovery, of trying to work out what was going on and why I was the way I was. And I just started meditating, and I would meditate for 2, 3, 4 hours a day because I could do nothing else. And after a while, that led me, from one thing to the next. And I eventually connected with someone else who had chronic fatigue, and I sort of self-diagnosed myself. And then I found a doctor who specialized in chronic fatigue and nutritional medicine and vitamin therapy. And his name was Dr. Brighthope, which I thought was a brilliant name for a doctor. And he taught me nutritional medicine. He taught me just so much about my body and about the world. And yeah, I just went on this sort of crazy meditative healing journey.
That's amazing. One of the things that I noticed in you telling me that journey that you had several epiphanies in there, maybe not only the desk epiphany, but going to a doctor and then having an epiphany that, that there was a different way of healing.
Yeah.
That's powerful because once we learn, and I think there's some things that happen when you live to the expectations of parents and society and all that in corporate world, we live to their expectations, we lose our sense of self. And
totally.
And that I think can lead to chronic fatigue because we're a symbiotic creature. Our mind and our body and our soul are so hooked together. Once your soul starts dying and your mind starts wandering and you lose that connection to what you're doing and the passion for what you're doing, a lot of people just stop. You have the epiphany to figure out how to go on and how to move on, which is really, really cool because most people don't do that. So you got yourself well.
Yeah, I suppose I was sort of lucky in a way that I sort of had to get myself well because I wasn't functioning, like I couldn't do anything. So I think the biggest epiphany I got initially was that, no one's going to heal me except me. Like I have to take charge of my body and I have to take charge of getting well. No doctor is going to get me well and no therapist is going to get me well unless I'm, taking responsibility for that. And I'm deciding to get well. So that was probably the next epiphany.
Yeah. And that actually, is probably the first step into healing.
Yeah, I agree.
And so many people need to learn that because they get stuck in certain places and they don't move. They kind of let everybody else tell them how to do it. And, the answers always lie within ourselves. We just have to be open to see them.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I think our bodies are incredibly wise and they've got, incredible amounts of information there about what we need and how we can heal. And I think we've been taught often over generations to give our power away to this healer, whoever this healer is, whether it's a doctor or whoever, naturopath or any of those, we tend to give our power away and say, fix me, just fix me. And it's like, we can't do that. We have to, part of getting well is to be empowered.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it because once you empower yourself, the mind starts working. We're doing research right now in expectations and cancer patients because cancer patients quite often, when they hear the diagnosis, look at it in two fashions. Either I'm going to beat it and I'm going to do everything and they get the positive side of it, or they say, oh, I got cancer and I'm going to die, And the research has actually kind of shown us that they live almost 7, 8, 9 years longer when they have positive expectations.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I love listening to some of your other podcasts and you talk about expectation. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I talk a bit about, possibility and having a possibility mindset, that anything's possible, right? Which is, sort of similar in a slightly different way. But
No. I actually, one of the things that I talk about a lot, and I've written about it, is my belief in the possibilities of everything. It's really a mantra of mine. I believe that anything is possible. There is nothing impossible to the human mind. We can accomplish anything we want. We just have to be willing to do the work to get there. We just have to be willing
Absolutely.
to do the sacrifice that it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. And just allow our minds to expand, and to sort of, fall into that expansive mind that we actually do have. And I love the sort of recent sort of quantum physics research that's going on around consciousness and does consciousness actually create the universe? I mean, that's what's happened. And I just love playing with that idea that, wow, maybe, if there's no consciousness in the universe, there's no universe. It's like, okay, hang on a minute. What does that mean for me? Like if that's actually what's happening, holy moly, that's amazing.
Well, just look, I don't know about in Australia, but I know in the United States, we have people that do nothing except go to work, come home and watch TV, get up the next morning, go to work. On the weekend, they watch TV. They binge all week on TV programs. What kind of existence do you have? I mean, what kind?
It's not.
It's not. So your consciousness,
not alive.
We lose that consciousness when we do that because it becomes so ingrained in us that I don't want to say it's okay, but they think it's okay to be that, but you don't expand your mind, and expanding your mind is such a huge, huge part of just growing in the whole realm of everything.
The need to have closure in any given situation is sheer human nature. And when it comes to romantic relationships, this desire skyrockets. Has your previously failed relationship left you in immense pain? It's not uncommon for people to shy away from a new relationship after their first one fails miserably. The fear of the unknown makes them hide in a shell to prevent any future heartbreak. Relatable? Despite wanting to love and be loved, you can't take the plunge if your mind and heart are still locked somewhere in the past. Maybe you aren't aware of the power of releasing the past, or perhaps you don't know how to do it. Art Costello in his online course teaches the art of moving on from bad places to happier, more stable ones. This course can change your life for good, helping you beat all kinds of negativity on the road to eternal bliss. Sign up now before the gloominess gets the better of you at expectationacademy.com.
How does wellness and, I know that there's vitamins like omega-3s, 6s, and 9s that stimulate the brain. How does that all work in relation to what you do?
I think, my focus is a little bit like yours in a way, is that, I'm here to help people to sort of make shift happen, and I think, what we were talking about before, I think people tend to give up, they give up and just have a nothing life. They just sort of allow things just to sort of go on, and they get lost in the nothingness, and I think we have to have people really embrace the something and not get lost in the nothing, because life is this incredible, amazing opportunity to create something for yourself, to create something for others, to create something for the planet. And I think we need to, really embrace that. And yes, there are vitamins and herbs that can help sort of biohack our biology to help us support that, because so often a lot of these things are generated by, hormonal and neurotransmitter reactions. And right now we're sitting in a world that is addicted to sort of this push button dopamine sort of hit. And a lot of the online and a lot of, our iPhones and our smartphones have led to this, where we can lie in bed and push a button and watch a movie or download another game or do something. So we're caught in this sort of addiction of fast hit, this dopamine hit. And it can be used for good and it can be used for sort of bad. And I think a lot of the time we use it to disappear, to vanish into the void of nothing. And, the interesting part about it is, I think, if you're open to it, even in that void space, there's everything, Another bit of sort of quantum physics research is around this sort of void and what's in the void, and everything's in the void, and everything sort of starts from this place. So, even when you get lost, if you just open your mind, you don't actually have to change anything. Even if you just open up your mind, you can start to see the possibility, you can start to see the expectations and how to sort of start stepping out of that. So for me, wellness definitely starts in how we view our world, how we're connecting to our lives and to the people around us. And there's this beautiful feedback loop system that happens in the world, around when we think of something appears, right? And if it's not what we like, then there's only a couple of things to change. You change how you're thinking, feeling, or what you're doing. And that generally changes that feedback loop.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to be a wellness futurist?
So one of the things I spend my time doing is looking into what's happening on the planet from a wellness point of view. And wellness is one of the fastest growing industries on the planet right now. It's worth billions and billions of dollars, and a lot of the big companies are now trying to get into the wellness industry because it is rapidly growing. So one of the things I spend my time doing is looking at, what are some of the advances that are happening? What are some of the things that are happening in the wellness industry that people sort of need to know about, especially if they're wellness practitioners or wellness professionals, because, obviously that's who I work predominantly with, is wellness professionals, doctors and chiropractors and naturopaths and massage therapists and osteopaths and all those sort of people. And so often what happens is they're spending so much time doing their magic, which is what they should be doing, right? Working with patients,
right,
helping, sharing their magic, and they're not looking out into the world. They're not seeing what's coming. And one of the biggest issues right now is that what happened in the music industry, what happened in the movie industry with Blockbuster and Netflix, what's happened in the taxi industry with Uber is actually happening in the wellness industry right now.
I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah. And it's sort of potentially dangerous for practitioners because it's actually going to change the landscape of how people practice. Right now, AI, artificial intelligence, is going to take over the diagnostic component of the wellness industry. So if you're a general practitioner or a predominantly diagnostic practitioner, that human interaction will eventually go. Because right now we have AI machines that are learning. So, for example, Watson, which is an IBM computer that was originally designed to beat humans at Jeopardy, which they did. They achieved that. They then set it a job to research all the cardiac papers ever written on the planet. And so Watson has been spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, accumulating knowledge on cardiac issues to the point now that cardiac surgeons can go to Watson, they can put in the test results, Watson can spit out what's going on with the patient and what the treatment protocol should be. Right? And Watson knows infinitely more than any cardiac surgeon will ever know. Like, it's not possible for them to know. So this is happening with Ali, which is a psychology AI with returned servicemen, who you may have heard of. And so there's all these AI sort of amazing technology that's coming, and it's incredibly intelligent. I mean, Ali's incredibly intelligent. She reads your facial expressions. It's not just, do you know what I mean? And so I think one of the predictions that sort of I'm having at the moment is that this diagnostic component of the wellness industry will disappear to artificial intelligence. And most practitioners aren't even aware of it.
A lot of people are very worried about artificial intelligence. Actually, absolutely. I am not, because I think it just gives us an added tool to use, and it's up to us to adapt to it and learn how to use it. Because, the part of the medical industry, one of the things, the problem has been being able to diagnose accurately.
Absolutely.
I lost my wife to cancer in 2006. And when she was diagnosed in 2003, her and I knew 3 years prior to that there was something wrong, but they couldn't tell us. No one could tell us what it was. And had they been able to, we would have been able to have a much better fight at fighting that cancer. So anytime that we have a tool that will help us, and whether it's a physical tool or it helps us physically or it helps us mentally, or even with cars and everything else that artificial intelligence, it's not a bad thing.
No, I don't think it is either.
Most people look at it through the lens of fear because they fear anything new, and when you fear like that, it stops. Fear always stops growth. You'll never see somebody grow when they're in a space of fear. So, you being a momentum expert also and peak performance coach, that when people are in fear, that it halts them.
Absolutely. Fear definitely stops them, stops them in their tracks. And I think you're right with artificial intelligence. It's nothing really to be scared about. I think it's another tool, as you said, and it's an opportunity. What you've got to do is adapt. You can't just keep doing the same old. You've got to adapt to whatever's coming new. And I think you're right. Fear then stops people adapting. Yeah.
And those are the people that get left behind and they feel they feel left out. They become restless. They become disgruntled, and they become the thorn in the side of growth. And
absolutely. And growth's inevitable, right? Like, we can't not grow.
Yep. It's
going to happen whether we like it or not.
I live in Austin, Texas. When I came to Austin back in the early 80s, Austin's population was about 125,000 people. It was a very small town. Now we go ahead 30 some years, in 2019, and Austin's population in our total area is around 2 million.
Wow.
And the people that tried to fight the growth back in the 70s and 80s, they didn't want it to grow. And it's actually hindered Austin now because they didn't have the foresight for highways and infrastructure. And we're paying for it now. And people want to be here. There's a massive amount of jobs. Our unemployment rate is like 2.5% or 2.2%.
Wow.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
But you've got to have the foresight. And you can't have foresight if you don't have vision and you don't have hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk about hope and momentum and potential?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when possibilities shut down, we start to lose hope. When we don't think there's another possibility, or we don't think there's possibility for a better life or a better job or a better whatever it might be, then hope starts to disappear, and once that starts to happen, then we do start to disappear into devices, and we do start to disappear into a life and just become this sort of robot. And that's not a life at all. And so I think being able to be creative, being able to tap into this sort of what I call the power of possibility is critically important to continue to build hope. Hope that if you're in a bad situation, like when I had chronic fatigue, every day I tapped into the power of possibility and had hope that it would be better the next day. And some days weren't, right? Some days were good and some days were bad. But I hoped that it would get better. And every day I kept in that mindset, that really positive mindset of possibility. I kept imagining the possibility that it's definitely going to get better. I knew it was going to get better. I integrated that with every fiber of my body, that at some point it was going to get better. Even if tomorrow wasn't, or even if the next hour wasn't, it was going to get better. And so I think, embracing that possibility helps you to embrace hope. And when you have hope, you have a future, right? The minute you lose hope, everything's, I had my best friend committed suicide, 10 years ago now. And the reason he committed suicide, I think, is he lost hope. And it didn't matter what you said. He was an alcoholic, and that obviously didn't help. And he became an alcoholic because of the expectations, because of the expectations of his father and his parents and the society and all that sort of stuff. And he couldn't fit into that the way he thought he had to fit into it. And then he lost hope and started drinking and drank more and couldn't find the hope. Like, he just lost it totally. And eventually, of course, when you run out of hope, when the last drop of hope's gone, it's over for a lot of people, and suicide's so, prevalent these days, especially with men, and it's terrible. So I think embracing possibility, embracing a possibility mindset, and I get people to ask a really critical question of themselves when their brain's fighting them, when they're sort of falling into, that lack of hope, and the brain sort of telling them, no, you can't do that and you can't do this. And, I get them to ask one question, which is, what if it were possible? Like, just for a minute, what if it were possible? And what happens is the brain, the brain's a very amazing organ. It's designed to solve problems. It loves solving problems. But if you don't give it the right problem to solve, then it's going to get you into trouble. So asking that question, what if it were possible, actually gets the brain to start thinking, okay, well, what if it were possible? What would we do? How do we do it? What would happen? And that's a big question I used to keep asking myself.
And that's why I think expectations are so critical for people to learn how to manage them. Because when you learn how to manage, and it's not the expectations of other people that count.
Yeah.
And
yes.
that I always do to prove that is, take your left hand, put it over your nostrils, take your right hand and put it over your mouth, clamp down on it. And if you tell me you don't have expectations, you wouldn't breathe,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how basic they are to our psyche.
Has anyone ever inspired you to discover a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled you? It is a magical experience, isn't it? Inspiration is indeed very powerful, yet it's often undermined. It can lift you from the ground to the sky in no time. Have you ever thought about returning the favor by inspiring the people around you? If you don't think you have it in you, we have good news for you. Art Costello's online course has everything you need to learn to supercharge yourself and shape your character into a powerful personality. Get ready to discover your strengths and unleash the creativity within. Don't believe it? Check it out yourself by signing up for this life-changing course at expectationacademy.com. That's expectationacademy.com.
One of the questions that I had was thinking about when you and I were just talking about hope is, do you have a definition of hope? And then do you have a definition of faith? What's the difference between hope and faith?
I think there's a different level of connection. I think hope, in my thoughts, hope is a mental aspect, is a more, and they're intrinsically linked without a doubt. But I think hope is more of a mental process, whereas faith is more of a, I don't know, that deeper sort of heart, almost sort of soul thing. I just have an absolute faith. And I think if you want to heal, so when I had chronic fatigue, I had to do more than just hope. I had to believe so much that it was going to happen. So I had to have so much faith in myself and the universe and I don't know, whoever, whatever, me mainly, that it would be better, and it was going to get better, and I wouldn't be like this forever. And I had to not believe the stories of hundreds of other people that had it 5 years, 10 years for life. And I said, no, that's not going to be my existence. So I hoped that it would get better. But at a deeper level, I had unbelievable faith. There was no other choice. It was going to happen.
Yeah, let me kind of give you my take on hope and faith.
Yeah.
Hope is having the ability to think that everything is going to work out, and faith is knowing that it's going to work out.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
And
that makes sense.
Well, and a lot of people always confuse faith, particularly in the States. When we start talking about faith here, they get a religious thing about it, that you're going to talk about religion. Faith is so much deeper than that. Faith has as many definitions as fear does. Fear, can come in so many, not definitions, forms. Fear has so many forms, and faith has so many forms, because it can be religious.
Yeah.
It can be spiritual, which is different than religious. I mean, there's just a whole ton of them. But what it really does is it affects our performance. And that's what I love about what you do, is that, I have a better understanding about being a wellness futurist, a momentum expert, and a peak potential coach, because they all are intertwined. They are all part of it. So let's talk about peak potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do people achieve potential?
I think that's part of our destiny. If we sort of are open to it, that is part of our destiny. Being here is to reach that, whatever that is for someone, right? And it doesn't mean you have to be, start Apple Computer or, be a Bill Gates or Mother Teresa or anything like that. No. It just means what it means for you, right? Your potential. What is your potential? And I think most people shut that down, that they shut it down because of external influences, expectations of, parents and all that sort of stuff. And I think, our job is to really step into that. So for me, there are really, three key steps to it. First is you've got to align with your truth. You've got to align with who you are. You've got to align with your magic. What's your thing that you're here to bring to the world? What's that special sauce, that X factor that, that you uniquely have? And then I think the second thing you've got to do is then allow. You've got to actually start to allow the possibility, start to allow it to be created, to start to allow it to, to happen. And then finally, you've got to activate it, and you've got to really want it to happen. So align who you really are, then allow the possibility. So open up to the possibility, and then you've got to activate it. And in the activation, this is where a lot of people lose it, right? Is that they just don't want it enough. I often ask people in the audiences I speak to, I go, how badly do you want this, right? Because often people can imagine what they want. They can have a dream of what they want. So they can, in a lot of cases, imagine the possibility of having $1 million or a better life or a better job or whatever it might be. And a lot of the time they lose it in the activation phase, where they just really don't want it enough or aren't willing to do what it takes to get it done. I often use the story of Aaron Rolling, who fell down the cliff and got his arm caught between a rock and the cliff face. And he was there for, I think, 72 hours or something. And eventually he decided that he had to cut his own arm off to get out and survive. And I often use that. I go, okay, so you said to me you want to do this, you want to achieve this. Okay, are you willing to cut your arm off to achieve that? I know it's a bit drastic, but it's like, how much are you willing to have it? Because often destiny and often your full potential takes work. It doesn't necessarily just happen. You've got to work at it. You've got to do things. You've got to take action. You've got to, and it's not about hustling. It's not about, killing yourself for it, but it is about taking action and being determined to push through the fear and the phobias and the, all of the things, the naysayers, all of those things that might, stop you or hinder you.
Don't know which direction you want your life to take? Are you sinking deep down into the pit of uncertainties day by day? So, what's the secret to leading a happy, satisfied life? It's taking matters into your own hands. But what if the matters in question are a total blur? Art Costello's Expectation Academy course aims to tell you exactly how you can get some clarity in your life. This course can be your savior on your journey to reinventing yourself. While you certainly can't plan your whole future ahead, you can definitely control twists and turns your life takes. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for this course now at expectationacademy.com. Get a chance to broaden your horizons and add meaning to your life. That's expectationacademy.com.
I think being at your peak potential actually happens quite often, and we don't realize it. We think of it in terms of aging and all those kind of things. But when I was young, and I think about Vietnam, when I was in Vietnam, one of my main goals in Vietnam was to survive. I wanted to survive.
Yeah.
And I developed skills in Vietnam, and I actually had some great teachers, as we talked about before. So I was with the Australian Rangers part of the time, and I was with the Korean Marines part of the time. And being with those, I learned so many different skill sets. Yeah. But that was I wanted to survive so much. My expectation was that I would. And I developed all these skills that I believe got me through it and got me there. Yeah. Everything I've ever done in my life, I've always wanted to be the best. And it wasn't about that I wanted to be better than anyone else. I wanted to perform at my highest level at everything I do. And I think when we get that mindset, that it really is a benefit to us, because no matter what I've done in my life, and I've done a lot of different things, I've always just tried to learn everything I can and perform at the best of my ability. And it's really, really served me well, because I don't ever do anything halfway. I just don't. It's just not in my makeup. And, I think that that's great.
Yeah. I have a similar attitude, to you, as if you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
And I have a little theory where I say, if you're going to do it, go hard, go hard at doing the work, go hard at resting, go hard at meditation, go hard at just go hard at it. Doesn't mean, self over it, but just, do it, really do it.
Yeah. And I think that creates that hunger for success that you talk about, that you're more determination and you want it more than anyone else. So when you have that, we manifest it. We manifest it in our subconscious. We really don't realize how much truth there is in those things. A lot of people think it's voodoo and woo-wah and all these other things. But, if you'll go to bed every night thinking and dreaming and wanting, mentally visualizing it and then getting up in the morning and start working towards those goals, your life will change. Yeah. Did that help you as a skier?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I spent a lot of time visualizing and meditating, imagining, the possibility of winning something or winning the next race or doing really well. And so, that absolutely played a, key role in, what I achieved at that time. And, it's critical. And again, it came down to, embodying that, but also wanting it, being hungry enough, I call it craving, craving it enough. And I think these days, we crave the wrong things, so often we crave the wrong things, and we've got to learn how to recrave, and crave the right things, the things that are going to benefit our life, that are things that are going to enhance our life and make our lives better, not the things that won't.
And what you crave can't be answered by anyone else. That is why you have to go deep. Yes. And identify the things in your life that you really want. That's the first step of expectation therapy, is that you identify what is really important to you at your core being. Because once you can identify that and you start working towards it, boy, life just changes.
It does. Yeah, it improves incredibly.
Yeah, and it just starts unfolding in such a natural way. And, and I believe in the vibrations, that we put out these vibrations. And I don't know how much you know about my story, but as a 9-year-old, I went to a mountaintop and laid on a mountaintop because I didn't know what was going to become of me, because I had been abandoned and had to figure out life on my own. And I believe that when I was 9 and started putting out those vibrations
Yeah.
and started believing that the world was mine and that it was up to me on how to handle it and how to grow.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I had the same epiphany when I was going through chronic fatigue. In the hours that I meditated, I had some incredible experiences around truth and what it was to sort of tap into that. And I sort of came up with a sort of resonance theory that, our thoughts and feelings, emotions, and our actions create a resonance, and that resonance goes out into the world. Yeah. And everybody picks up on their resonances, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. And the resonance of things that's going to attract or repel things in your life and help guide or, otherwise.
Yeah, I call it the butterfly effect.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because
it's true.
You just start putting out these waves of energy, and they go somewhere.
They do,
and
absolutely.
I've just been fortunate enough to live long enough to see them start to come around. Sometimes we need to be more patient, and that's one of the things that I've learned in my life. That patience has been. I haven't always been the most patient. I've wanted things now and immediately and all of that kind of things when I was younger. But I now am looking back on my life and I start to reflect on it, and I start to see that the patience that I've had over all these years, especially in later life, everything comes back to you. It comes back and it comes back in greater abundance.
Yes,
and
it does.
The rewards are much more fulfilling when you
absolutely
find out what you're supposed to be doing with your life.
I agree. And that's that alignment piece. We've got to get aligned with that. And that's a journey, that is a journey of self-discovery and, living life to some degree.
Yeah. And do you think that young people can actually see it? That's
I think it's interesting because, we're growing up in a, sort of the most impatient generation in history, because things can be, bought or got or achieved instantly. And with our hyper-connected world of Instagrammers and, they see all these young people having everything really quickly and at what seems to be easily. And so a lot of patience, I think, is being lost in that generation. But I think they are coming more connected. I think they have the ability to connect quicker and deeper than what maybe we did. And I see a lot of them coming already knowing what their purpose is. I remember my young daughter, when I think she was 8 or something, or maybe a bit younger, she turned to me in the car when I was driving to school one day and she said, "Dad, I know why I'm here."
Wow.
And she spoke about she's here to teach people about animals and how to look after animals. And it was a really interesting conversation that she was very crystal clear about it, that I'm here to do that. And so I think they have a deeper connection to it if they allow it and allow that, and they are allowed to have that be fostered.
Right. And that's where the expectation part comes in when parents start setting their expectations for their children.
Absolutely.
They actually stunt the growth of the child because what they do is the child is going to start living to their expectations instead of to their own expectations. And people will find themselves, human beings will find themselves much faster. They will find their purpose. They will find their direction more naturally when they can live to their own expectations and not to the expectations of others.
I absolutely agree. The Greeks had this thing called teleos, and in their schools they used to teach everyone to find their teleos, which is their purpose, and they taught around that. They taught around that everyone had a purpose, everyone had magic and had a thing to offer, and part of the role of the school system was to help people find their teleos and go live it.
Yeah, and boy, we don't do that here.
No, neither here. We don't. The school system's still set up to set them up to go to university and then get the job or the career rather than find who they really are and what they're really here to do.
Yeah, and they're doing a disservice to so many kids. My middle son, when he, on his first day to go to college, he came home because he was going to go to college at St. Edward's in Austin. And he came home and said, "Dad," went to orientation. And he came home and he said, "Dad, I don't want you to be mad at me, but I don't want to waste your money going to college." He said, I want to work with my hands So my only suggestion to him was to go find himself a trade or skill that he could pursue. And do you know, he's found his passion in being an electrician.
Nice.
He became the youngest master electrician, the youngest journeyman electrician. He now owns a big solar company. And, I'm so proud that he came and said to me, that isn't what I want to do, because he's very happy and does exactly what he wants to do. He's very independent and doesn't have to rely on anybody. And he's got a trade that will always be in demand,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that he's loving what he's doing. And I think when you love what you're doing, when you're doing your passion, you're going to instantly be more successful. Like that's naturally going to happen.
And he's very innovative and creative.
Love that.
He looks at different ways to do things, and as long as they're within the electrical code, he's fine.
Yeah, of course.
But he's very innovative. I mean, he's created new tools and new processes on how to do things. So it's really great.
Yeah. Well, he had a good, role model and a good father to allow that possibility to appear, right? And for him to have that insight and be confident enough to actually come to you and say, hey, Dad, knowing that he wasn't going to get caught in an expectation that you might have had for him or you thought should happen. And I think that's great.
Yeah, and everybody at school and his mother also felt that he would become an attorney. And
wow.
He had the greats to do it. He's very, very smart. He's very intelligent.
Yeah.
But I've always told my kids, I support you no matter what you want to do. Fantastic. And as long as they keep it legal and there's nothing illegal, I'm fine with it. So,
yeah. As long as they're happy, I think.
Yeah, and that's it. It's about being happy. My oldest son's a therapist in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
My daughter's in retail management, which, she loves doing. She's a people person. So she loves working with people. So it's so important. So
yeah, and it's great to see that. It's great to see them doing that and being happy and, leaving their legacy, whatever that is. I think it's brilliant.
I got one more question that I gotta put to you that is an oddball one. Is everybody in Australia a private pilot?
No, unfortunately, they're not. But you obviously met a few people who are.
Yeah, I have. Having been there and seen it, I mean, I haven't seen all of Australia and I would love to. But being a pilot, Australia is a big country.
Yeah,
a very big country. And,
yeah,
if you're going to get around Australia, you need to be a pilot, don't you? I mean, isn't it kind of?
Well, it certainly helps. I mean, just to give perspective for those that aren't aware, is that, Australia is pretty much the same size as the United States, but with 30 million people versus 300 million or something. And so there's a lot of space in between cities and towns and, there's a lot of space.
I'd love to go to the interior. I just heard that it's just amazing to go to the interior.
Yeah, the Outback is a pretty incredible place. There's some really amazing places to visit. And yeah, it's an amazing place, definitely. And, you guys have got amazing, places there as well. And I would love to explore more and certainly some of your national parks. And, I'd love to get into, more of that.
Yeah, the Grand Canyon's beautiful. I mean, there's no matter where you go, and that's another part of believing in the possibility of everything, that when you see how vast the world is and how big it is. And I mean, when I was in Vietnam, one of the things that struck me about Vietnam was the beauty of that country. And, it was sad to see some of the devastation that went on with, Agent Orange and some of the defoliants that they used. But, when you see the beauty of the world and you've traveled it and you've seen it and you don't get stuck in just this one space, we tend to, I know people here in Texas who have never left Austin.
Wow.
And I think, how can you have a world view and see the big picture of the world when you don't have that? So
I think it does limit your possibility too. Expansive mind. I think when you do interact with other people, other cultures, other worlds, it naturally starts to open your mind up to other possibilities. So I think travel is really important.
Yeah, it does. I wish that more people would be open to travel, but
I agree.
When economically they can't afford to, you understand it. It's
sure. Even exploring your own country, I know so often that doesn't happen. People can afford to travel, often travel outside of their country and actually, don't even explore their own backyard.
I just had a thought. I just had an epiphany.
Great. I love it.
Some people don't even explore their next door neighbors.
Yes, that is true.
And that's the thing.
True.
You can explore the world and not have to leave the city you're in, particularly now, because we can do it on the internet. But more so when you start exploring with people, when you start exploring the possibilities that people bring, that is so huge. And people don't do it. No. You go to talk to your neighbor and they don't even want to know who you are. I mean, to me, that's the greatest,
And doesn't that have to be one of the most joyful but important things in life is connecting?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think social media has been amazing to connect, but it leaves us a bit short on the deeper connection. The real connection when you get to eyeball someone, when you get to, shake someone's hand or be in the same space as them is a much different connection than it is being friends on Facebook.
Do you know that that's the greatest joy that I have about podcasting is the connection that I make with people. I get to hear their stories. I get to know them in a deeper sense of the word. And it is just absolutely the greatest thrill of my life. I've enjoyed it more than anything I've ever done in my life. This podcasting thing is really great. And I think more people should do it. There's room out there. There's so many ideas that we have for, podcasting. It doesn't have to, you can explore your expertise. If you're an engineer at a factory, no matter what field you're in, a garbage man or a seamstress or whatever it is, you have knowledge that you can share. And that's the greatest joy.
Yeah, even just sharing your experience, your journey.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there's always insights that come and I think, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, we're getting near to our hour and I wanted to give you time to where people can learn about how to get a hold of you and where. And then after we do that, then I'll take us out of here and we'll call this a beautiful experience because Marcus, it's been great. I mean, I've enjoyed this immensely.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate and thank you so much for having me on your show. And I've really enjoyed our conversation. And really, there's two places, I suppose, to sort of interact. You can go to marcusbird.net. You can go to wellnessleadershipacademy.com or obviously on social media on Instagram, Marcus Wellness Leader. And I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can search me under Marcus Bird. And they're the best ways to get hold of me. And I'm always up for a conversation and to have a chat and see how I can support and help, inspire people to, embrace the power of possibility and make the impossible possible in their life.
That's great. And everybody that's in the audience, all this Marcus's information will, of course, be in the show notes. Marcus, can you leave us with any parting thoughts?
I think the key is to, is really, dream big. And then when you think you've dreamed big, dream bigger and then go for it, and make sure that whatever you're doing, you're really connecting as deeply as possible with the thing that you're really here to do, the passion, the magic that you're here to share. And don't let anything get in the way of that dream. Don't listen or believe anyone who tries to tell you anything other than it's possible. Anything's possible if you set your mind to it, if you want it enough, and if you dream big enough. And I think, I want you to go for it. Give yourself permission to go for it.
Those are wise words. And I couldn't think of anything more fitting to end this show on than those words, Marcus, because, we all need to become not only dreamers, but doers. We need to do it. Nike says, just do it. Well, just go do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a joy, and I really appreciate being here. And thank you, Art. You're doing a great job. The show's amazing. Really love it. And thank you for having me on your show. Well,
thank you. And we're going to do this again, Marcus. You're on my list now of repeaters.
Look forward to it. I love to have another conversation.
Well, with that being said, everybody, where you can get a hold of me expectationtherapy.com. You are always appreciated here, and I want you to believe in the possibility of everything. Just as Marcus and I have said today, anything is possible when you put your mind to it. And with that being said, Heather White, can you take us out of here?
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.